Hi, I'm Rob.
And I'm Rob.
And this is Ask Rob and Rob.
Hello everyone and welcome to Ask Rob and Rob, the show where you get your property questions in, well, mostly property, and each week we answer them. And don't worry, we're not going to stray from that solid format this week. We've got two great questions coming up. But before we do, let's give you a quick reminder of how you can get your question on the show.
Yep, all you've got to do is call what we've recently renamed our hotline, which does sound so much better. 013 808 0035, 013 808 0035. Give us a call and leave us a voicemail, or you can go and do exactly the same thing over at propertyhub.net/ask. Either method equally reliable for getting your question in, so make sure you do it and so you can follow in the fine footsteps of Colin.
Hi, Rob and Rob. My name's Colin. Love the podcast. Thank you very much for providing it. I've been listening avidly for about the last year, and I'm really keen to get started on my first investment property. We have a bit of a dilemma. Myself and my wife have saved up around £50,000, which I'd like to use to invest in property. We also need to move home in the next couple of years, we reckon. So my plan would be to take that 50,000 over the next 2 years, invest it in flipping property to increase the pot of money so that we can then use half of it for a new home, and then I can go on and use half of it for further investments. My wife's suggestion is that we increase our mortgage and buy a bigger, more expensive property that we can add value to, and then we use that 50k to do that. Then in the future, we can either release equity for me to go on and invest in property or sell that house to release that equity. I'd really appreciate your thoughts on it, which strategy you think would be the best. Thanks very much. Bye.
Oh, dangerous territory this. I don't know if I want to wade into the marital dispute, but okay, I'll have a go. And I'll be diplomatic, also a bit scared, by saying that, in fact, you're both right, or neither of you are right, if you prefer. But basically, there is no absolute right answer to this. As ever, whenever there's a question about which is the best strategy, the answer is usually it depends on you. And the same is true here. But what I can do is talk through some of the considerations. So you've got £50,000, you've got 2 years to flip it, make a profit, use some of it to buy your new home and some of it to go and invest more. Sounds brilliant and could indeed be brilliant. What are the downsides with that? Well, one of the downsides, of course, is that if it goes wrong, then it puts your own future plans at risk. So say that you either don't make as much money as you think you will, or you lose money, which can happen. It can happen to anyone at any stage, but especially if this is something that you're new to, it's more likely that your first project won't go brilliantly. You'll learn loads of really valuable lessons, but it might not be an absolute smash in terms of financial returns. If that happens, then that might mean that your own plans to increase the size of your own home are put at risk. So how do you feel about that? That's something to take into consideration. Maybe you're super confident, maybe that would be okay and that's something you can live with, but it's just something to consider. The other factor is that you'll be paying capital gains tax on whatever money you make from doing that. Now, tax is not a reason not to do something, because if you're paying tax, it means you're making a profit, and that's a good thing. However, if you go down the other route and use your own home instead, then you won't have to pay that. So let's move on to that other option, which is buying a property that you can add value to instead. Well, if you do that, then as I've said, you won't have to pay any capital gains tax on your gains. The reason for that is you're talking about refinancing rather than actually selling it. But even if you did sell it in future, there's currently no capital gains tax to pay on your main residence. So if you imagine that you made the same gain out of each, then doing it on your own home would be better. The downsides of that approach? Well, there are a few. Firstly is you're talking about releasing equity, which is something that you may well be able to do, but the ability to release that equity would be dependent on your income. So you'd need to actually be able to afford that extra borrowing. And it means that your investments would then be tied up with your personal living situation, which some people are totally fine with, but some people prefer to keep them separate, have their own mortgage or something they try and pay down, even if they're okay with having mortgages on the rest of their portfolio. Doesn't mean it's a bad thing. It's just how some people feel about it. And the other potential downsides are just personal ones, really. Do you want to make your decision about where you live based on what would be a good investment and where value could be added? Or do you just want to buy the house you want to buy? It's not easy to find the place you want to live anyway. So do you want to have that extra complicating factor in there? And then the final one is, do you want to live on a building site? Again, some people are absolutely fine with this, but other people are just not into that. And I would count myself in that group. So there's a lot to think about. And most of it, Colin, comes down to your personal situation and your preferences and what you want from a lifestyle point of view rather than anything else. So I've not given you an answer. I'm not silly enough to say that one of you is right and the other is wrong, but hopefully I've given you some factors that you can consider to work out which option is going to be the best one for you both.
Although, Colin, if you're the only one who listens to the podcast, you're right. Only joking. Right, next up, we've got a question from Toby.
Hi, Rob. Toby here from London. Firstly, as always, many thanks for all the content. Brilliant stuff, as usual, consistent and top quality. Quick question. I'm a first-time buyer. I'm 26 years old. I wanted first to invest in the property market. However, after speaking to certain mortgage lenders, mortgage brokers, they say that because I have no mortgage history, the interest rates that I can get are very, very poor and the banks don't want to lend to me. What would your advice be on getting onto the buy-to-let market or investing market without any mortgage history? Many thanks.
Toby, you've not been misinformed. If you are a first-time investor and first-time property owner, which basically means you don't currently own any other property, then the options available to you are quite limited. So if we assume already you've got a decent credit rating, the only other thing you can do at this point in time is possibly look at putting a larger deposit in. That may bring down the rate a bit further for when you invest. So for example, I'm going to make the assumption now that you're looking at putting 25% down, which is the norm. If you put a further 5% down, so a deposit of 30%, you may get a slightly better rate. There is good news though. Things will be a lot easier on your next property. You will then be an experienced landlord and the rates available to you will fall dramatically. Now, it gets better again if you're prepared to wait, because in time, when you come to remortgage, so let's say you go for a 2-year product, when you remortgage this property, you'll also be considered by some to be experienced at that point. So you'll have more options available to you when you come to remortgage. So don't lock yourself in for a long period of time on this first mortgage, because things should get better. And the mortgage market is hotting up right now. It's getting more competitive. It's got a long way to go in my mind. It's still not amazing, but things are definitely on the up. So if this trend continues, by the time you come to remortgage, there'll be plenty of options available. So not possibly the answer you want to hear. However, it's not all bad news and things will improve for you in the future. You might just have to swallow a slightly bitter pill to begin with, but in a couple of years, things will improve. And on your next property, things certainly will improve. So best of luck, Toby. I hope it goes well for you and I hope you can make the numbers work.
Well, there you go. Answers there for Colin and Toby. If you've got a question of your own, whether it's about property or just a marital dispute you'd like us to answer, send it all over because we're going to be back with Ask Rob and Rob next week. But before then, we'll see you on Thursday for the Property Podcast. Until then, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.